Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I'm your host, Tosca Di Matteo, and I'm so excited to talk to you today about giving yourself permission to chill. That's right. This is the Vacation Inner Critic edition. It's the end of June. It's the start of summer. And I want to make sure you're taking full advantage of this season where it's more likely that you're taking vacation or you're thinking about taking time off because you need a freaking break. And I want you to take it. And it is your birthright to take it. So let's do it. Let's dive in. But before I get into all of that, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and I do all things personal and career transformation. So whether that's supporting you in addressing your inner critics, supporting you in holding boundaries, or rewriting your narratives for the future you desire, I do that work to support you. And if you want to learn more, visit coachtosca.com. That's Coach TOSCA.com. All right. So yes. So I am really excited to talk to you today about a phenomenon I call our vacation inner critics, the voices in our head that give us all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't take a break, why we can't take a break, why we can't shut her down. And a big part of this is deconditioning from the messages that we've received our entire life around taking vacation and taking breaks. And I'll just start with, a lot of this begins with what we're taught when we're young, right? Are we modeled that it's okay to take off? Are we modeled that it's okay to completely shut down, to not even do chores, to not work, to not do anything at all? And if you've been given messages to the contrary, it might be really hard for you to stop and do nothing. You might use words to describe yourself like lazy or unmotivated or things like that. And those comments are definitely comments coming from your inner critics. So inner critic messages around not believing it's okay to take vacation, they sound like this. Well, how will anything get done if you take off? They say things like, you'll get behind at work and it's not even worth it. You'll have so much to catch up on. So what's the point? Your vacation inner critic will tell you you're going to lose momentum, that the creativity and the fire that you feel isn't going to come back. Your inner critic will tell you now is a terrible time, and on, right? So think about, what does your vacation inner critic say to you anytime you want to take a pause, take time off, or anything like that? And look, how can we be surprised that these voices are in our head? First of all, we have a country and a system that believes that, 2-week vacation a year is enough, and that there's so much scarcity around time off, whether that's for mental health, whether that's for sick days, physical health needs, whether that's even having a baby, right? Let alone vacation from just life in general. So we have to remember what we've been conditioned to believe and then come back to the truth. And the truth is our very human needs to stop and to chill and to do nothing for a while and to actually be comfortable with getting bored. We get so used to overstimulation that I think there's a part of us that just doesn't know or doesn't remember what it's like to not be stimulated at all and to just be and to literally contemplate our navel, to stare at the sky and hopefully think of nothing at all but the color of that blue. So this is really important for me to talk to you about because we are literally in an epidemic around people not taking time off. And you know about the consequences of these things: health, mental wellness. It's what leads to burnout. It's one of the factors, right? And I talk to people all the time that are fighting themselves to take time off. And I'm not saying I'm immune to this, because when I want to take time off, I also have to kind of decondition and rewire and honor what it is that I need. And if you really sit with yourself it's really powerful what you can discover around what you really need. And that might look like time to yourself, a solo vacation. It might look like time in nature. Maybe what you need is some adventure. Maybe what you need is family time and some grounding. So, what you need in terms of this permission to chill or permission to take a break may not be what you think it is or what you think it ought to be, especially because we have such limited time off that usually we're prioritizing one type of vacation. Maybe for you, it's prioritizing spending those days off with family. Maybe for you, it's prioritizing spending time off with friends. And there's other kinds of vacations that we may need that feed our soul. So I want you to really think about this right now. Like, what is the break that I need? Sometimes, for example, I need vacations that are full of adventure. Maybe it's not that I need 4 days at the beach, although I feel like I always need 4 days at the beach. But you know what I mean? Like sometimes I need a vacation where I'm doing nothing. And sometimes I need a vacation where I get to stimulate my mind and my body and I'm very active. So first thing to do here is to really honor what do you need and to set yourself up for success when you get to that execution. And that might look like putting on your out of office. Like I'm starting with some basics here, but you know what? Not to out my husband, but my husband never puts on an out of office message and it drives me crazy because I know what that's doing is creating this ever present ability to reply back to these emails because he didn't put on the out of office. And so he's not giving himself permission to not respond. Anyway, I digress. Ryan, if you're listening, I hope you're listening. Take it to heart. No, he never listens to my podcast. It's fine. But it's just an example, right? Of whether he realizes it or not, is he giving himself permission to really, really 100% completely shut down? Now, look, he's an entrepreneur. And I would still argue that there is capability and capacity. Like, I think that whatever excuse you're putting in front of you is a damn lie. In fact, that's a pretty good indication that an inner critic is in your head because inner critics tell us lies. And if you want to go back to the basics, go back and listen to my podcast episode, Inner Critics 101, because inner critics tell us lies about what will happen and about the consequences. And what they don't do is tell us what's possible because we're giving ourselves a break. What our inner critics don't tell us is why we need it and why we should give ourselves more time than we think we need, because it takes time to decompress and get out of our head and to stop thinking about those things that we habitually think about, like work, like our home responsibilities, like the fact that we have to clean out the closet, And that brings me to my next point, which is the less we take vacations, right? The longer it usually takes for us to sink into vacation when we do take them. I remember in my corporate days, right? Vacations were so infrequent that when I did take one, it took like 4 days just to empty out my brain and stress from all the work stuff. And it was only after that that I could really start to chill. And then the more that I took more frequent vacations, even if they were not 2 weeks long, for example, or 1 week long, it was easier to shut off my mind and get into rest and relaxation mode. And, a lot of this is connected to our nervous system and all that neuroscience stuff, which I don't go into, you know me, but it is very much connected to, is your nervous system used to in practice of calming down and getting out of that fight or flight mode, which is why it might be hard for some folks to give themselves permission to take off because who are they? Who are you if you're not in fight or flight mode? Consider that. Like if you're raising an eyebrow on some of this stuff, pay attention to that because that's the thread that will help you get out of your own way. And look, I get sometimes vacations feel like a privilege, right? Maybe it's attached to your financial needs, all that good stuff. But I want to reframe all of this. Vacation is a choice. You always have a choice. And there are always ways, I think, to find and get what you need. Now, whether that's asking for support from others, whether that's reducing some expenses, whether that's aligning with the powers that be around negotiating due dates and timelines, my point is where there's a will, there's a way. So if in your heart of hearts, you're like, I really need to shut it down, I want you to know it's entirely possible. You can absolutely do it. What's getting in your way is these limiting beliefs about what's possible. And that is self-sabotage. And that is conditioning. And that is all the voices that you ever heard about telling you it's not okay to chill the F out. I mean, look, I grew up in a household where vacations are few and far between. And often vacations were kind of stressful at the beginning and the end. So, that might be a deterrent for some people if you had kind of experiences around vacations that weren't good. Like maybe you were stuck in a car with siblings and like time off was actually, terrible. But you get to rewrite what vacation is for you. You get to live life on your own terms, take vacation on your own terms, and you get to ask for support to get what you need. So this really requires you taking a step back. I need you to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of your life. You taking 3 days, 4 days, hell, 15 days. When you really think about that in the whole timeline of your life, it's like the length of a hair. It's nothing. It's nothing. And, we give ourselves permission to do things when we're at like DEFCON 4, right? Like when we have some major health thing that requires us, like mandates us to sit our ass down, whether that's COVID, whether that's you broke your leg, whether that's you have to have surgery or something unfortunate like that, right? We find a way because we have to find a way. And what I'm trying to say to you is like, I feel you have to find a way when you feel like you really need a break. And that might be starting with purging the lies that you're telling yourself about what's possible, what's okay, and what's not okay. And you know what? If you're in a job or situation where you feel like there might be some consequences, let me tell you, the biggest consequence is having health issues. So I would argue that it's important to pay attention to what the consequence is in terms of your truth and not in terms of external consequences, because the most important consequence is if you're betraying yourself. That's the bigger challenge, in my opinion. So yeah, I've been talking to some people actually recently about vacations. And let me tell you, when you know in your bones you really need to stop, it can be easier to honor that. And I think that's like the work that I've done with some folks recently, which is like they've come to that conclusion after a really long hiatus of not taking time off. And I want you to think about this, not just from the perspective of what am I doing this summer, but like, what do I think my cadence needs to be in my life in terms of complete shutdown? And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, well, what you ought to do is just completely shut it all down, turn off your phone, like take Instagram off your. I'm not going to tell you any of that stuff because that might feel overwhelming and that might feel like not doable for you. So what I want to invite you to do is ask yourself, what is it that I need to detox from? What is it I need to like shut off for a little while? And that will lead you to the actions that will best support you. Because look, I'm the first one to say, like, I don't typically do huge digital detoxes. I don't typically do those things where it's like I'm shutting every single thing down. But there have definitely been times in my life where I have, and I really, really needed it. And I probably will experiment with a little of that this summer. I'm not going to lie. But I'm actually going through the whole process myself of saying, what do I want to do this summer in terms of taking time off? Because there are some guests that I have coming, and there's some beach time that I have coming. And part of this is really understanding what are the boundaries I want to hold for the time that I want to set aside for taking vacation. And that may not make everybody else happy around me because I'm honoring what I need and I'm not honoring what other people need. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, when I have visitors, that might not mean that's when I'm taking vacation. That might mean that, hey, when I'm done with work at the end of the day, I get to have dinner with them. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm using my vacation time to spend with them. I don't know. Right. So consider where you need your boundaries, whether that's with your time, whether that's with the people you want to be around, whether that's with the office and your accessibility and all those things. And you may not be able to go all the way to bright this very first time that you give yourself permission, right? Like you may not be able to say, I'm going to not touch my work email for a whole week. Maybe you won't be able to do that. But I want you to push the envelope in terms of what feels uncomfortable. Maybe it's that you're giving yourself permission, one day for 5 minutes to see if there's any emergencies. I don't know. I'm making it up. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you to do something that feels so out of reach and so uncomfortable that you're not even going to do it because you're in overwhelm of how to make that work. But I think if you take some smaller steps, that will help you get to those bigger swaths of time where you get to really decompress and shut down. We get addicted to the stimulation. We get addicted to the doing. And so the other way that you can think about vacation is detoxing from the addictions that you have, the emotional, the action oriented, the stimulation, the constant contact, constant content, you know, because we live in a world now where it's like we live in these extremes. And I feel like we've forgotten how to come back to balance, or that we have to go to the other side of true silence, for lack of a better term, in order to come back to our center. So to counter some of those inner critic thoughts that you have around how difficult it's going to be and all the things, or that you shouldn't do it, or that you don't really need it right now, I want you to counter that with expansive thoughts and questions around what would be possible if I took some time off? What might present itself if I gave myself permission to chill? What would I do if I had nothing to do at all? How would I use my time? What is it I'm deeply desiring right now? What does my body need? These are some of the questions you can ask yourself to start to envision or realize the benefits of taking some time off, of resting that beautiful mind of yours, and coming back to yourself and coming back to your center in a really deep and profound way. I know I've been on the soapbox for a while. Like this is a topic that I can easily get fired up about, because I know how beneficial it is. And I know how we get in our own way about giving ourselves permission to do that, because we are conditioned to think that productivity is everything. And in fact, the most productive thing you can do is rest when you need rest. You come back so much more filled up with so much more energy that you then get to be in more flow and you get to tap into your reserves. And if you don't know what that feels like, then this is definitely the episode for you. Because if you don't even know what's possible when you come back from detoxing from whatever it is you're detoxing from, if you don't know what it's like to just let your mind get so empty, trust me, it's life-changing on the other end of that. It really is. And the more that you do it and the more that you practice it, the more you experience inner peace and calmness more regularly in your life. So I hope that this summer you take some time away, truly, truly time away, and you ask for the support that you need in order to do so, if you need support to do so. And so I'm taking the time this summer to refuel my cup and to put my energy against some different things. So feel free to reach out to me. I love to hear from you. You can find all my contact information in the show notes. And oh, by the way, if you've been listening and you enjoy the Unlock Lab, I would love for you to rate, follow, and write a review on this podcast in whatever channel you listen to, because that helps bring more people into the fold. It helps more people know that it's okay to take vacation. So, big thank you in advance for doing that. It would mean the world to me. So, thank you for tuning in. Please reach out and let me know that you plan on taking vacation. And if this episode changed your mind about what's possible, let me know about that too. I love to hear success stories. All right, that's what I got for now. Happy summer. Enjoy the sun. Enjoy this time of year. And ciao for now.